Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of VOX VOMITUS. I am your host, Jennifer Ann Gordon, the author of the Kindle award-winning novel Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, as well as Pretty Ugly and the Hotel series. Joining me today, as always, is my VOX VOMITUS vixen, my co-hostess with the mostest, Allison Martine, author of the Bourbon books, which includes Dibs Since September, Move On Melinda, and Climb the Salmon Ladder. Joining us today, we are so excited because we were supposed to have her a few weeks ago. She has been on our show before. The one, the only Amber Garza, here to talk about her latest release, A Mother Would Know. Amber, we loved you so much last time that we had you. Like, we were already buying and reading your book.
That's so nice.
By the time your publicist was like, do you want Amber back on the show? And I'm like, I've already pre-ordered the book in 2 different versions, but yes.
And I contacted my publicist and I'm like, I loved being on VOX VOMITUS so much last time. So they were so fun.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Can you get in touch with them? So I'm really happy to be here.
Take note.
Take note. I know. I will say this. You are the second author in the past 2 weeks that they asked their publicist to reach out to us. And it's like another big name author. So we were like, what?
That's cool. Well, you guys are so fun. That's why.
And Candace Nola says, hello, Candace.
Hello, Candace. So Amber, tell us a little bit, and our viewers, of course, a little bit about yourself, and then a little bit about this book that I read in one day, A Mother Would Know.
Yeah, so I live in Northern California with my husband, and both my kids we're empty nesters. Both my kids have moved out now, so I'm living that empty nest life, which is nice. I've been writing for a long, long time, but A Mother Would Know is my third thriller that came out, and so A Mother Would Know is about a woman, Valerie. She lives in Midtown Sacramento in this very cool Victorian home, the home of my dreams.
I was going to say, it's based on your house because I'm in love with the house.
It's not, but it's funny. It is based on a home that I pass. When I go to Midtown, I would always walk past this home. And so I'm like the creepy lady, if you're watching this and you live in that home, that's why I take pictures of your home. Because one day I was taking a picture of that home and there was a person in the window. And I was telling my husband, I'm like, run.
Okay, so did you ever knock on the door and say, may I please tour this? I'm an author and this is research.
No, and it's funny. A couple people have said, oh, you should knock on the door and hand them the book and tell them. But I don't know if that seems
now it's
weird.
Creepy. Now you've made it creepy.
Yeah. I think that would be cool. But then again, if they're like, well, what is the book about? And you're like, maybe a ghost and murder and early Alzheimer's.
I feel
and childhood guilt.
Right. I feel like that's the issue, right? Is if
it was a romance
or something, but because I don't. So anyway, so she lives in this beautiful Victorian home, and she's starting to have cognitive issues, memory issues, and she thinks she's going through early onset Alzheimer's. So she invites her estranged son to move back home. But within a month of him being home, 2 women in the neighborhood are murdered, and she starts to suspect maybe he's involved in it.
Maybe he's done some of those
things. Some bad
cause
things.
These bodies to pile up, which is why maybe it's not the book to give to the homeowner.
Yes, maybe not.
Yeah, because they're like, this is what our beautiful home inspired in you.
Yeah, exactly.
And Jen, I can see you saying, oh, it's fine for me because you live in a haunted house, and when I've shared
I live in a creepy
house,
old
you're like, yeah, that's my thing. So if somebody else was inspired by your house, you'd be like, yes, thank you. But that's a specific vibe that
it's a specific vibe.
Are not going to be like,
yeah, and I feel like that would be me too. I would love it. I would be like, oh my gosh, are you serious? But yeah, I don't know if that's everybody's thing.
Yeah, a lot of people don't want to think of their house being a murder house or even associated with a murder house.
Yeah. But it is but it started because it's just a gorgeous home that I love, that I would love to live in. And then I would just always notice it and look at it and think, wow, it's my perfect ideal home. And then it kind of morphed into, at some point, as I was writing that book, I want that to be her home. At least I can live in it vicariously through my character.
And she loved her home.
She loved her home. Yeah.
Well, that's true because I mean, people who write romance, they're having the vicarious romance. You're like, I have thrillers, so I'm not having the vicarious people murdering each other, just living in the nice home. Like, draw that line there. That's
I
good.
feel like that's why a lot of my
I don't want to suspect my son is a murderer, and
No.
I don't. But I do want that. But I do want the home to live in, and I don't even mind if it's haunted.
So I love that you just said, and don't worry, I don't suspect my son as a murderer, because I won't lie, the work in progress that I'm working on now is based on like the ballroom dance world, of which my husband and I, that's how we met.
Okay.
And maybe a character that is sort of based on him might be a horrible monster, or he might not. We don't know. It's also kind of a rom-com. And he's like, when this gets published, you're going to have to like go on interviews and right out of the gate say, my husband is not a murderer.
Right.
Well, and I've read just little bits of it, and I totally knew. I'm like, this is based on him, isn't it? And she's like, yeah, maybe, totally. And so knowing what kind of things he's already being implicated in, not even necessarily body count in that way, I was just like, oh, I see, Jen. Like,
Yeah.
I
made him a himbo.
That's so funny.
Who might be a murderer.
Ooh. Okay, but so we were talking, people who watch this show, and I mean specifically watch, not listen to, know that sometimes we get into the spirit of things with what do we wear? And Jennifer asked me, well, what are we going to wear? I'm like, well, it's a mother would know, and I'm a mom, so I'm showing up as myself because I know I'm like anything themed. But I will tell you that hits so close to home, especially with I don't think my youngest can hear me, but like the clingy little boy who is like the mama's boy. And I'm just like, this is my child. I'm a little worried here that this is my child.
And I will say it hit close to home for me because my mother does have early dementia.
Okay.
So I was
Between
like,
the two of us, we're screwed.
I know, but I felt like it was so relatable.
Okay.
Like I just loved every character, and I loved that you made your narrator unreliable, but maybe not necessarily in the typical thriller mom way, which is 19 bottles of Chardonnay.
Right.
You gave her perhaps, like cognitive issues. So I'm like, oh, she doesn't need to drink the 19 bottles of wine that the people I write about read. Like that's what they drink.
That's a thing. That's a whole genre. What is women's fiction? Drunken women. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that was the genre standard.
And I did purposely do that because I have done, and When I Was You, she was drinking and all of that. And so, like, that's an easy one for me to go to. And so I was trying to think when I was going into it that I wanted there to be, I wanted her to have some type of physical something in order for the son to even come back home.
Yeah.
And then I thought, and at first I was thinking of, a different kind of illness, more of a physical illness. And then I thought, I could marry the two. And then that would then she would have the cognitive issues and the reason for him to come home. So I had thought that through for a while to figure out what I wanted that to be. So thank you for.
Yeah, it really, really worked. Did your son find it weird that you were writing about like a son probably close to his age that comes back home and might be a killer?
Yeah, and also it's funny too because like my son has the beard and my son always says for sure. And so I had this one say for sure, mostly just because in my mind it's like when I'm trying, as a writer, it's like you try to create characters and you're wanting to make sure you're true to that demographic and that age range. And so I always kind of picture my kids if I'm writing around their age because that's what I know.
Yeah.
So I had talked to him about it. Like, this is what it's about. And like, I don't think my son's amazing and wonderful. And I never think he would do anything horrible. Like he is such a kind-hearted person. And clearly, Hudson's character goes in a different direction. And so I wanted him to know what I was going to write. And he was totally like, my family understands my mind and like how I think as an author and that I have to pull some from life to make it feel relatable for people. The thing that was funny about it is that I had dedicated When I Was You to my husband and Where I Left Her to my daughter. So my son was next. And I was like, oh no, terrible. So I dedicated that one to him. So that was the only thing where he was like, really? You dedicated
really, Mom? How'd you do it that way?
Dedicated to my son, who is definitely not a murderer.
Well, and I love that you do that, though, not just the dedication, but that you do base it on that kind of age range and that demographic. And it's funny because since I do have kids, I have other authors reach out to me if they're writing children and say, okay, my characters are this age. Is this accurate? I had a text this morning asking me, would a naked child seeing another naked child at this age react in this way? And I'm like, okay, what age? Okay, yeah. And I'm doing this as I'm driving my kids to school on voice type and asking my kids in the back, so what do you guys think? They're like, yeah, that seems about right. Yeah, like kids say it's fine. But I appreciate you do that because I've occasionally read books where they've got littles, and especially it's more true with littles that are doing things that littles can't or wouldn't do. And I'm just going,
as a writer, I have done that. And I've had people go, well, it's obvious you never had kids. A 3-year-old wouldn't speak in that kind of sentence. And I'm like, what if it was a very gifted 3-year-old?
Right. Yeah, you picked the exceptional child. And that's always true too. But it is, I feel like, more true to life when you've got the age appropriate reactions, verbal stuff. And that reminds me, I've got to respond to one who is asking about like a 1.5 and a 3-year-old. And they're like, this part I actually saw the kids say that. So that worked. So I've got proof that it happened. I do think with older kids, it's almost even, I don't want to say an era or a generational thing, because a 70s era 20-ish-year-old is going to be different than one in the millennium and all that, because we don't talk quite the same anymore.
Right.
And I know this from watching Euphoria that teenagers now are definitely more screwed up than even we were.
One episode of that, and I'm
in a different way, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, I love Zendaya, but I could not watch that show because I'm like, I have children coming up on that, and I will never sleep again if I watch this show. It will just be like,
if you're like, is that what their high school years are going to be like?
Can't do it. No.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Don't want that. We're skipping that. Okay, but so we talk about the son, but there's also a daughter who is in no way based on your daughter either. But the sibling interchange here, or the interplay, just I mean, I don't have a brother, I have a sister, but I feel like those roles that you get into childhood and how those evolve, and even just the dynamics of them bugging each other and how they interact. I mean, you don't have any siblings that's based on, Amber, do you?
Well, what's funny is, like, so with my kids, they didn't get along at all growing up, but they do really now. And I don't think I pictured, what's funny is saying that, like, when I was writing Kendra, I don't think I pictured my daughter at all. I honestly, like, in some ways, so I'm the oldest of 2 brothers. And we all get along really well. So I wasn't necessarily like that, but I was more bossy. And I definitely was the one that was more like, I guess as a child, especially, I wanted to be the one that my parents like went to for things. And
like, I'm the one that I'm basically another grown up. I'm the responsible one. I was the only child, so I was always like, I'm one of the grown ups too. Like I have to sit at the kids' table.
Right. Like, have you met me?
I've been 40 since I was 2.
I think that's true.
That is true. I mean, I shouldn't brag about that. I like,
no, but when you talk about, like,
I have the deep line
like
wrinkles,
the 3-year-old who says these complete sentences, because that was you. So based on you, that works. But most parents are going to read that going, and if it was your mom reading it, she'd be like, yeah, that was Jennifer. Weird.
Except my mom would never read one of my books.
That's also true.
Oh, really?
That's
She's waiting for me to write, and I quote her words, not mine, a nice book. I'm like,
what is that?
I know. I was like, what does that mean? And I think she means like something where there's no like dead people.
Oh, okay.
Less drowning and laudanum.
Yeah, like just less like crimes against, just less. Yeah. Like
that's
she
funny.
wants to be a rom-com.
Okay, that's
you
funny.
Give her
My
some
mom is the
wine and just
opposite.
pretend.
Your mom's the opposite.
Yeah. So when I was writing romances, she's like, "I'm sorry, honey, I just cannot get into this." But like when I started switch to the thriller, she's all, "Okay, now we're talking." Like,
I love your mom.
She likes the mysteries. That's always been her jam. And so like the romances, she's like, "They're good, honey. You're a good writer, but like it's not. I can't do it. I can't do all this happy dialogue." So I was like, that's fine.
So what made you switch over to like the thriller mystery genre?
Well, that's what I mostly read, and like my whole life. Like I started reading Mary Higgins Clark in like 7th grade, loved that. I always liked the mysteries. Before that, I was Nancy Drew. I actually kind of happened into the romance genre because I started self-publishing, and it was really good for that, like to find your niche was really important in self-publishing. And I felt like I did, especially in the sports romances, like the young adult sports romances. I really found my niche there. But I always wanted to write thrillers, so I would write them on the side. And then like kind of just every once in a while I'd put out like a suspenseful romance. And then I just always had in the back of my mind, like one day I just want to write like a straight thriller. And so I just kind of was waiting for my moment or when it clicked, like at that first idea, you know? So it was always something I knew I wanted to do. I enjoyed the romances a lot, but it wasn't like I didn't set out to initially write romances. That's just kind of what I happened into. So, yeah.
Allison, can you relate to that?
I can. I mean, I joke I tripped and fell in the hot tub and ended up writing romances because that's not what I set out to do either. And it was a weird circuitous thing. But I mean, I love the fact that you're like, but this is always what I was doing on the side. You're like,
yeah,
it's a romantic suspense. Just throw that in there. And now you're able to stretch your legs. You're like, we're not wasting time with any of that romance or that feels. We're just piling up the bodies.
Right. Well, and I think you probably can relate to, like, after you write romances for a certain amount of time, I kind of just got, like, I got tired of the trope, I guess, of the romance. Like, I wanted to take a break, and so that was when I finally decided to write When I Was You. Oddly enough, now I kind of am getting a little bit of a bug in me to be like, I kind of want to write something really sweet. Because I think that happens, right? Like, you get tired of something, you need to try something new. Like, my brain doesn't always want to just do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
So
no, you're completely correct. Yeah, no, you're correct on that. And I think sometimes it ends up being a double-edged sword and like a mixed bag of blessing, because on one hand, it does help for me, for my brain to be like, okay, now I'm doing this, and that I can get this part of my desire to be creative in this way out. And then I come over here and I can be silly and fun. And like my rom-coms are much sillier and funner, pretend that's a real word. And then
we're writers.
Affection, like, well, even my writing style is very different between the two. Yeah. And I feel like I would probably feel trapped if I were always one way or the other. But then the flip side is switching between them. Like, I'm trying to get going on a rom-com now, and I've actually been listening to rom-coms, and they've been missing the mark. They haven't been making me get those feels. And I'm like, I need to get back into the feels. I can't. So, but I know what you're saying, where it's like, okay, you get tired of always being over here. You need to stretch out and go this way. I don't know. Do you have the trouble then when you make that transition, or is it like, okay, going that way?
No, I mean, I don't have trouble with the thrillers. Now that I've been writing the thrillers, I actually did kind of do a sweeter project that I can't really talk about, but I was doing that and I kept inserting like thriller-ish things in it.
Out of there.
And my agent was like, maybe we'll take that phrase and we'll put that in one of your thrillers, because that's not, because my brain wants to like make things more suspenseful. So I feel like I have a harder time now, like making that transition back, but going to the thrillers for whatever reason, my dark mind just went right there.
Now, do you think of yourself as like two different brands, like the Amber Garza thriller writer, or your romances under that name too?
Those are, my.
But and perhaps in the future, if there was a romance coming out,
there'll be something else.
Would that be? Do you think that would still be under the Amber Garza
name
brand?
I don't know. I would assume no, but we'll see. Yeah.
Well, if we ever have you back on as a romance author and we need to put you incognito, and like we're going to put you in a mask and maybe a little big wig. I mean, your hair is pretty short, so we could do, if we gave you a wig like Jen's hair.
Yeah. Wig and just like a kind of just like a trampy outfit.
Yeah, and then like really big glasses. And then I don't know if we could do one of those voice disorders, so we don't know. Like one of my good friends writes under several pseudonyms, and we've been trying to figure out how to get them on the show without revealing their secret identity. We're a video podcast. People can see all of us and all of our flaws and my weird lighting and whatever I'm doing with my hair. It's hard to be incognito on our show.
I mean, we had Mary Burton on our show, and she's an incredible thriller writer, and she also writes romance, but I don't remember the name she writes romance under. But her website is like, you can clearly click on either profile.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
Well, and I write under two different names, but since I haven't had any of my spec fic out yet, it hasn't really been an issue. And that's why I usually do everything under a fictional Hubbard, because it's like, well, I'm always writing fiction, so that's always kind of accurate. But then some people don't know what my first name is either. So I'm like, it's Allison. It's just, so I do write it out. I'm like, I know who I am. Some people just like, hey, Hubbard. I'm like, that's a little weird.
Hubbard, like that, and then to bring it all the way back around, then it's like Little Mother Hubbard. Little Mother Hubbard, who would know?
It's old Mother Hubbard. You
I just want to say old,
and it's true. Like when I realized, like, oh, I'm marrying a guy whose last name is Hubbard, I'm gonna be a nursery rhyme. Yay!
I didn't even think of that, honestly.
Yeah,
Until you said it. So,
and fortunately, I feel like they aren't teaching it as much anymore. So I don't feel like it's as much a stigma as if maybe I had gotten married 50 years ago.
I mean, her life was probably pretty great. I mean, she lived in a cupboard with animals? Wasn't that? I can't remember.
No, old Mother Hubbard went to the cupboard to give her dog a bone. When she got there, the cupboard was bare, and so the poor dog had none. That's not a great life. The dog had nothing. What do you think the dog did? Ate old Mother Hubbard.
Yeah, okay, then that is totally a plot of like one of my horror books.
That's probably true.
It's funny though, because I was trying to do it in my brain and I was like, oh, Mother Hubbard lived in a cupboard.
That's what I thought. I was like, that sounds great.
What you guys are doing is the same thing I do, which is you combine things that are similar. She lived in a shoe because there was an old lady who lived in a shoe. No, she's a different old lady. And it's just like there was the farmer had a dog.
Yeah, old Mother Hubbard lived in a cupboard eating her curds and whey, which I know is not.
That's a Muppet. But I mean, I did the same thing with Old MacDonald had a farm and Bingo was his name. Yeah. Not right either.
That does sound like it goes.
I just put them all. They all blend. It's like all the Randy Newman songs. You can sing them all together because it's all the same key. But doesn't it really help? But no, I mean, I love that you have these different thrillers so far, and I want to now look to see if there's any romance sneaking into the thrillers. Like the suspense sneaks in. Let's just pull that line out and put it over where it belongs.
Yeah.
Is that your editor doing that and telling you, no, Amber, it doesn't go here, it goes over here?
No, I do feel like in A Mother Would Know, probably that's the one that I ventured the most into the romance.
Because there's a romance plot in there, sort of.
Yeah. And I did really enjoy writing him and their relationship. So that's kind of where I was like, maybe I am feeling like I want to write.
Well, and when you got into the alcohol wasn't for her. There was another character who was hitting that sauce.
Yeah.
Not hot sauce. There's just the line. But not for her. So hey, there you go. You're breaking stereotypes. It wasn't the mom.
It wasn't the mom. No.
I guess it's just whoever's around the kids needs to drink.
I know.
Yeah, there's maybe something to that.
I don't know about that. A little suspicious there.
So I know you said you're working on something you can't really talk about. Are you working on anything you can talk about?
Yes. I do have another thriller coming out this August called In a Quiet Town.
Called what?
In a Quiet Town.
In a Quiet Town.
That's fast because this just came out, January? Or no,
December, but it was originally going to come out in August. And so I had them both done, and then it got pushed back to December. So then that's why the other one's so quick.
Okay. I was like, holy cow, you're writing up a storm. That is really fast for traditional publishing.
Yeah. It feels like a fast turnaround for sure, except in my brain, I'm like, oh, it makes sense because both of them have been done for a while. So it felt weird with The Mother Would Know because I'm like, when it was coming out, my brain had to keep telling myself what it was about because I wrote it so long ago that I would be like, wait, what one am I talking about?
Yeah. I think we all have to do that when people are like, oh, tell us about blah. And I'm like, that was so many years ago. And I'm like, and they'll be like, well, describe it in like 3 lines. And I'm like, oh, I'm so out of practice with like, here, pitch this book.
Pitch? No.
And I'm like,
I'm never good at that. That, and also especially with traditional publishing, there is such that slow turnaround sometimes that by the time you are really in the thick of it, then you're moving on to something else, and then by the time the book comes out and you're promoting it, that could be 2 books ago as far as like your process and going through that and going, I don't remember who these characters are or what they did. Can you tell me about my book?
Right. Yeah. What book are we talking about?
I mean, go ahead.
And then the other thing for me is like, I tend to be really excited about the project I'm currently working on. I don't know if you feel that way. So then it's like, then I was so excited about A Mother Would Know, couldn't talk about it. Then it comes out and then I'm like so excited about In a Quiet Town. But then I'm like, wait, That's not what I'm
the book.
talking about.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten to read that one yet.
We haven't gotten to read it yet. It's probably
Well,
not
and-
even available for pre-order yet.
Yeah, and we joke just because, like we said, we were supposed to have you on earlier, and we had read it before then, and now we've read several other books since then, and it's like, okay, bring my brain back to that. Like,
Right.
I wish I read faster. I mean, I read pretty fast, but I wish I read faster so I could always like binge it right before the show, so it's right up here and I can remember all the details. I mean, and your book had a lot of little details, a lot of little clues and little things dropped along the way. As thrillers should. But then I'm like sitting there going, I don't know if I remember most of them.
Yeah.
Just because it's been a couple weeks since then, I'm going, okay, stop and think. Oh yeah, the thing they found on the floor. I can't say more than that. It's hard to talk about a thrill without spoiling a lot of it.
It
Like,
always is.
who were the dead people, and who were those people's secret relationships with, or notable relationships with, or backstories with, and how many bodies do we really count in this one, including ones that happened before even the plot started? There's bodies.
Yes.
True.
One thing we can talk about though is, and this is going to sound so weird, your TikTok is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
And I am one of those, I don't want to do TikTok. What would I even say? Why would I be funny? Would I be spooky? Who knows? I would probably be nothing. It would just be videos of my dog. And then every time, and it would be. And then I see your TikToks or I see your Instagram reels, which are like the same thing. And I'm like, oh, see, Amber's so good at this. Like, how do you find those like funny clips that you just like lip sync over?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
like, is there a talent to this? Can we hire you to be our TikTok manager?
Like a TikTok coordinator.
A TikTok coach.
Yeah, there you go. It's funny because like at first when TikTok became big, I was the same as you. I was like, oh my gosh, another thing I have to do. Like I can't just write books. But then it like for me, always like the pictures and stuff and Instagram and like coming up with things to say all the time felt tedious. But then once I started getting into TikTok, I'm like, oh, I like this. Like I enjoy it. I think it brings out like that drama side of me that I love.
I love.
I could be this, funny, or I can be dramatic. So what I do though is in the evenings, I'll spend like while my husband is watching something on the TV, I'll scroll through TikTok and just watch a bunch of them. And every one I like, if I like the soundbite, I just save it. And then I know, okay, then what I do is like usually Mondays, I make that my content day. And so I literally will just get in my closet, get a bunch of shirts and a bunch of jewelry. And then I get out my favorite lipstick. And all I do is like do 2 videos in one shirt, then change a shirt, jewelry, and lipstick, do 2 more videos. And I just spend the day just creating the content. And then I just put it up at different days.
I love that.
Because people will say, oh, like people in my life, not online, but people in my life will say like, oh, you spend a lot of time on TikTok. And I'm like, well, no, I really just spend it's like a 3 or 4 hour window every week. Yeah. But then I just like post it throughout the week.
Right. But you're organized about it and have it figured out. And it's funny because
that's the one I'm not as organized.
Yeah, I'm not good with that. Well, my in real life writing buddy / hairstylist, this is not her fault. It's been a while since I've been in. She and I got together on Tuesday and I was writing and she's like, I'm just going to be organizing my social media. And she was doing that and she's like, yeah, because this is what the algorithms are doing right now. So this is what I've got to be able to figure out and how to do this and get some different stuff going. And it's that organizational stuff that my brain goes, I don't know how to do that. And I know for me on TikTok, I just get super overwhelmed. Like right now, my most watched video is a caterpillar. I'm not even in it. It's just a caterpillar.
Yeah. I don't do TikTok, but I do Instagram reels. And my most watched is my dog with his button in the air.
Right. And I won't put my kids on. So it's like, I'll do them if they're at a distance and you can't do their faces or whatever. But it's like, yeah, there are creepy people out there. They don't need to be creepy kids.
So like, I don't want to like keep harping on the TikTok thing, but I did want to say one thing that was so great. And I just think it was awesome for the writing community as a whole, as you did a few videos where it was like you at a book signing at Barnes and Noble and the types of things people say to you. Like, they're like, oh, is this like James Patterson? Oh, do you read James Patterson? Like all of that was so stinking relatable. Were like how many of those were like straight out of your real life?
All of them.
You're like,
All
the
of them
James
were out of my
Patterson
life.
one.
Yeah, I think it was in the real. I think I did like John Grisham, but I don't know what authors I've been asked. But it's always like, do you read this person? Do you know where that is? You should read them. They're so good.
Like, thank you. Do you want my book or not? Oh wait.
And I really get such a kick out of, they're like, oh, it's a thriller? I don't like scary things.
Yeah, I don't do that.
And then they like look at you like you're a creeper. And you're like
you're the murderer.
Like you're the murderer.
It's good.
Or the funniest to me are the people who are very like, oh my gosh, that is so great that you wrote this.
Good for you, girl.
Like, because it's always like, I'm not a child. Like, it's my job. It's a real book. Like, because it makes you feel kind of like, you know, like you drew a pretty picture or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
like, I'm going to go put this on my refrigerator at home. Good job.
Really fat
so
magnet.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that is true because I've had the same kind of thing where people are like, oh, you write books? That's so interesting. Like they don't know what to do with it. And it's like you want to have the follow-up question, which you don't, which is, have you bought them? Go buy them. Have you reviewed that? Do that too. Because they mean it really nicely, but then it doesn't end up that way.
Right. Yeah, I think like the answer to like if people say, what do you do for a living? And you say an author, I always can tell something about a person right with how they react, right? Like if they're a reader, they're gonna get super excited. If they're not a reader, they're going to be very uncomfortable because they have no idea what to say to you.
Yeah, and they're like,
and
I don't even know what that means. Does that mean you write for a newspaper or a website?
Yes. And if they're like somebody who is really enamored by like, you know, the James Pattersons and the John Grishams of the world, then usually they're more into like the financial aspect. Like, oh, how does that go? Like, oh, you must have a lot of money. Like then that gets into like very weird questions where it feels a little bit invasive and you wonder like, do they ask other people this about their job?
Okay, but there are people who do that because I remember years ago back when I was practicing law, somebody being like, oh, so you must make good money doing that. And it's like, why would you ever ask anybody what they make? And then they're like, yeah, how much was law school? And I'm like, what? Are you planning on going? Are you trying to do your own financial planning? Because I went on scholarship, dude, and I don't know if you got those jobs.
Nobody asked me how much money theater school was because they know it was too much for whatever I'm making.
Right.
Now.
Well, they also then assume that as someone with a theater background that you aren't making any money.
And I am not.
And you're like,
and I am not.
That's not helpful there. But yeah, it's a weird thing because why would you ask anybody that? But there are creepers who do that.
Yeah. Well, I've been asked so how much money do you make at this? And I'm like,
this?
mumble. And, or people will ask, so do you get paid for your podcast? And I'm like, no, we do it for fun. And also because like, we love the authors and it's like, again, our branding. Because I don't do TikTok.
No, and I don't, and I do want to figure out more TikTok stuff. And the same person who does my hair and does her social media, she's great on there. And at some point, she's like promised to coach me. I'm pretty sure I'm unteachable and uncoachable and stuff like that because I don't have like the whole, hey, do a little dance and lip sync. And then when I do want to do something, I pick something stupid, obscure that TikTok's like, no, we don't recognize this. This doesn't exist. The opening song to Annette. Nobody saw that movie but me. So Jen couldn't even sit through it.
I didn't get through it, but I did like the opening song.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, I'm like, my luck, I would end up picking something super obscure and then I'd get sued because it wasn't fair use or something. And then they're all mad at me. And then Adam Driver sues me too. And I don't want that.
And then I come to the court to defend you. And Adam Driver and I become a throuple with my husband.
I almost did a spit take.
This just worked out really well for Jennifer.
I know. See, I can write romance.
It's totally how all of them go too. I love how there was no
my husband is
there.
watching this going, did you just say a throuple with Adam Driver?
He's fine with it.
I'm
sure he's totally fine. I don't see an issue there. It's totally fine. Totally fine. I mean, I've read a few rom-coms lately that haven't really had the feels and maybe are missing some of that progression. We're missing the progression. We'll work on the progression of just becomes a couple. Okay. Or
well, the progression has been that I've been obsessed with him, obviously, for many years. And he would just understand that. Like Wuthering Heights.
So then we get another lawsuit from his wife saying, back off, Jennifer. Go away. Yeah. Amber, I'm sure, was not expecting all the questions about how do you do the TikTok and where do you get it?
I know.
your
We
hair. I
became
really like your
that.
hair. I like
We
that.
became those people at a book signing.
I know.
So how do you do that thing, Amber? Can you tell us? Can you teach us how to do that?
Hey, at least we didn't ask you about James Patterson.
There you go. Yeah,
We're
as
not
long
worried
as
about it. Yeah. No, and it was funny because I got sent a little video clip where it said that all authors are secretly James Patterson, and it's like, no, that's not true. James Patterson's not a real author and pays other people to write his books. Shh. Okay, I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know that like
There are rumors of that.
Yes, I have heard that too,
brand.
so.
I have heard other people saying that near me, but I have never said those words.
No, and I have the fact that like most of these things are co-written. So I know in the past I've been approached by agents to do like, oh, IP. And I always wondered, like, is this where an author who's no longer actually writing their books wants you to write their books and they get their name there and then you get kind of along for the ride? I don't really know how that works, but I don't really want to do it. I'll stick with writing my own weird stuff.
I know, but if somebody asked me to write like a Buffy novel, I would totally do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little different though, because that's an IP that you're like, but I'm in love with this. I could do this.
Right.
Like, I'm
yeah,
already
if it was something you were really into, I could see, doing that for sure. It'd be really fun.
Yeah. If you had to write any IP project, Amber, what fandom would it be? It could be obscure. It can be something that nobody cares about anymore. Like me, original Twin Peaks, like nobody cares about that anymore.
That is such a good question.
Revival.
I can't even think on the top of my head what I would want to write, but I don't.
Have you ever written fan fiction? That's usually where it starts.
I've never written a fan fiction. I think though, sometimes I've thought about like I know this sounds weird, but like podcasts, for instance, like I love true crime podcasts. And I've thought before, like if my favorite true crime podcast wanted to write a book and they needed someone to help, like I've thought those thoughts, you know what I mean? Like I would love to help them like put it into book form. And
I thought that about my favorite true crime podcast, My Favorite Murder, and then they somehow put out their own book because they're like smart and funny. Yeah, they did. And one of them's already a writer, but I like tried to put it out in the universe. I'm like, maybe they'll somehow know how much I love them and contact me.
Yeah.
That's never happened.
No.
You're like, they just know. They can feel the love through the air. And then,
all the way from New Hampshire.
Yeah, all the way from New Hampshire. They'd have to get through a lot of the snow.
And I think they are probably, I think, they all probably can write books on their own. But that was just like a wishful thinking sometimes, because if they write that well with their podcast, they probably can write books. But I get really fangirly about my podcast because I listen to them so much, so you feel like you know the people.
Yeah. Yes. And then you're like, they know me too, right? And they're like, no, we don't. That's how I feel about Seth Meyers. Like Seth Meyers is part of our family.
I do know Seth Meyers.
See, you actually do know him. I don't.
But, he would not remember me, but his mother gave me a D in 7th grade French, and his brother was in my German class for 3 years.
Really? Oh my God.
Yes. Really? That's hilarious. I love that. No, but it's the whole thing, like where it feels like you actually know them, and then you forget that it's not reciprocal, and they have no idea who you are, and you're like, oh, I'll just be over here in my corner by myself.
Right. Yeah, it's weird. And I think that's part of why, like, I make the jokes about, like, not being James Patterson, not being John Grisham, but I actually do like being where I'm at, like
you should really love being
I would love
awesome.
I would love having like millions of people reading my books, but I also like that I can be relatable to people, because it is so cool that someone reaches out to me or sends an email or sends a message and I respond, because I'm not getting inundated with them. And I get, if you're inundated, you can't respond, but I still can. And I think there's something relational that does happen, because people read my books and they feel like they know me, and then they reach out. And I know, like I said, I would love it if I was selling millions of copies and couldn't respond, but I do also love that I'm not, and that I can be relational with people, because
it's
I've been a fan of things and people don't reciprocate, and it always feels a little like, oh, I guess, they're too big of a deal for me. And I understand it, but I know how it feels. And so I like that. I don't do that to people, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh, well, Amber Garza, we want to be Amber Garza. So
we're going to go into your closet and start
going
into your wardrobe. And
I know. Then we're going to start doing TikToks where we're like, I'm Amber Garza.
I'm Amber Garza.
Buy my book. A mother would know. And you're going to be like, What is wrong with you? You're not Amber Garza.
Like, those look like Amber.
I'm not
I'll
sure
put on a
everyone knows.
blonde bob. I'll just be like, I'm an Amber Garza cosplayer.
Nice.
And
See,
then
and I-
you'll become huge.
And I think it's fair if we are like saying I'm Amber Garza and buy my book and then holding up copies of your book, because then it's just free promo. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's some really old middle-aged ladies just pretending to be me doing their thing. I'm like, what's up with them?
Oh
You're
my
not
God.
cool and
At
young
first
and
I
hip.
was like,
I'm
"What
not cool and
middle-aged
young and hip."
ladies?" And I'm like, oh, wait, that's us.
Actually,
That's
if you
us.
guys start doing it, I'll start taking some weeks off.
Yes.
So that'd be great.
We'll just rotate. You don't have to worry about it. We can do it.
Yeah, we'll be like, which one of you is being Amber this week?
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, like sister wives.
Yeah,
We
there
are.
you go.
Yeah.
I'm open to it.
It works. It works.
Hey, I love it. Amber, you have, of course, been amazing. Everybody. Oh, I'm afraid my light's going to go out. Okay, there.
What happened?
Didn't go out. Oh, the cord was moving, and I'm like, oh
Okay.
no.
Just
Technical
you're in a
difficulties
place
here.
where the weather and the electricity, like I check in on you on a daily basis. Are you okay? Are you snowed in? What's happening? I was cold this morning at 43 degrees, but it's sunny now. So
It's been snowing here for a week and a half.
I know.
It's
She's over there living her own version of The Shining.
like The
It's
Shining.
It's fine.
No, I don't like that. I do
Yeah.
not.
I mean, we like it in theory, but then like tonight it's supposed to start icing and we're supposed to get 50-mile-an-hour winds. And I'm just like,
No.
help
I
me.
only like icing on cupcakes.
Oh, now I want a cupcake.
Sorry.
No,
Yeah.
if it gets into like the 40s here, I am so annoying. I'm so
too.
whiny.
Me
So whiny.
Like we live here, so we don't get that kind of stuff. Like I'm
Yeah.
sitting there driving my kids to school and my fingers were numb and I'm like, it's so cold. And of course, within an hour it was like 70, but I'm just like, I'm so cold.
Yeah, I cannot do it.
No, me neither.
It's 61 degrees in my living room.
Oh, no.
No,
It's
that's when
not
I
like
just,
that.
no, that's when I just put this on.
That's when I'm just like, that's the beauty of an old house. Where you're like, I love it. Why can I feel the wind through the walls?
Why am I outside?
You're like, oh, I'm not
Here.
outside. I'm in my bedroom. Amber, thank you so much for being here. Everybody who is watching this live or on the replay, make sure you check out Amber's website and her book, A Mother Would Know. God, my brain stopped working immediately. A mother would know.
No, a mother would forget halfway through because that's kind of me.
Exactly.
Mother would forget,
It is
what
that.
was I doing?
I'm only a mom to a dog and a mom to my own mom.
That's a lot though.
So, but everybody who's watching us, thank you so much. Join us next week when we have Clay McLeod Chapman, author of The Ghost Eaters. Look at this cover, everyone.
It's a cool cover.
Nightmares Forever.
Mhm.
So good.
Mhm.
So thank you, Amber, for being here. Thank you,
Thank you for
Allison.
having me.
And we will see you all next week. Bye.